There you go, Chair, we're up and running.
Bore da, good morning. May I welcome all members and officers to the hybrid meeting of the Economy, Environment, Overview and Scrutiny Committee. This meeting is able to be viewed live by members of the press and public today. Therefore, may I welcome anyone that may be watching remotely. A recording of this meeting will be made available on the Council's webcasting and YouTube channels after the meeting has concluded, should anyone else wish to view it. Please be aware that this meeting is being transcribed only for the purposes of producing the minutes. The transcript will be deleted once the committee approves the minutes, and it should not be downloaded by anyone other than Democratic Services. To confirm, as a council, we welcome the use of the Welsh language within our public meetings, but I can confirm that I have not received any notifications or requests to use Welsh today. Therefore, the meeting will be conducted in English only. May I remind members to refrain from using the chat facility and instead use the raised hand icon to indicate when you want to speak. Please could you also keep your microphone muted when not talking so that there aren't any interruptions encountered. May I also remind members that as per statutory guidance made under Section 4 of the Local Government Wales Measures 2011, our formally adopted hybrid meetings policy, any members attending a meeting remotely must be able to be seen and heard by the members and officers who are attending the meeting, as well as by members of the public viewing the meeting. So can I ask that you all please use your cameras for the duration. Moving on to the agenda. Agenda item 2, sorry. Can I ask Jade if there are any apologies?
Yes, thanks, Chair. We've had apologies from Councillor Carl Gordon, Councillor Haynes and Councillor David Williams this morning.
Thank you, Jade. Right. Agenda item 2, declarations of interest. Can I ask members to state whether they have any declarations of interest to make, please? Agenda item 3, minutes of the meeting held on the 3rd of July 2025. Just to remind members, these minutes relate to the updated reports we received on the progress and impact of accepted recommendations and the progress against adopted action plans. I hope you all had a chance to read through them. Anyone got any comments about the minutes? If not, I will take them as approved as an accurate record. Agreed. Okay, we accept the minutes. Agenda item 4, the action sheet. There are no outstanding actions to comment on, so I think we just move on to agenda item 5. So agenda item 5 is the Economy in Place Blueprint for Growth. May I welcome Councillor Joanne Gordon, Executive Member for Economy and Skills and Regeneration, Christina Harry, Director of Economy in Place, Gareth Beer, Head of Economy in Place, and Beth McPherson Online, Head of Communities and Renewal, to this meeting. Can I ask the executive members and officers if they could provide members with an overview of the main points of the report, please, at this time?
Morning, members, and thank you for the invite today, and thank you in advance of your recommendations to shape the blueprint for growth. So the proposal for an Economy and Place Blueprint for Growth will identify the key opportunities and priorities for growth, investment and regeneration across our federated councils. A spatially targeted approach to ensure that the growth opportunities arising from our federation with Blaen and Gwent are maximised to address inequality in our communities and improve public health. Whilst the Blueprint for Growth will be a joint plan, we retain our sovereignty and decision-making within each separate council. As you know, the Blueprint for Growth is a work in progress, so your collective view and recommendations will be key to shaping the approach to drive the bold and ambitious investment that we need in our boroughs. Thank you.
Good morning, members, and thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Gordon. It's quite a unique opportunity that we have through the Federated Council model that we have to look at both Blaenau Gwent and Torfaen through that wider strategic lens. And both counties have a strategic place within the region and also within the UK. We have some shared challenges, and we also have some shared opportunities. And equally, we have opportunities and challenges which are quite unique to each area. And as Councillor Gordon has said, whilst as officers we are looking at this through a wider spatial lens, in terms of decision-making, individual decision-making, that remains wholly within the respective local authority areas. The Economy and Skills Strategy was approved by this Council back in October 2022 and has made some good progress since. And the detail of the progress that has been made is detailed in table 4.3, under paragraph 4.3, under some performance metrics there. And both Beth and Gareth are there to take any questions around the detail of that. But that strategy provides us with a very good platform upon which to build and to look at the area now through a wider lens, as I've already explained. And the Blueprint for Growth, the intention of the Blueprint for Growth, what we really don't want is a big strategy that sits on the shelf. What we really want is just a very sort of succinct document that really sets out clearly what our ambition is and what our targeted interventions are going to be, and also the performance areas that we are looking to drive up also. So it's going to be a very succinct document that is a live document rather than, I don't know about your sort of experience of strategies, but very often I have found they sat there on the shelf gathering dust. So the blueprint will reflect, as I've said, on the key challenges and opportunities we have, and sat underneath, so that is the overarching strategy. The Blueprint for Growth is the overarching strategy. And another key document that sits directly underneath that is the local development plans. And both councils are currently working towards their individual local development plans. But as officers, what we are looking to do is look at those, trying to align those so that the spatial plan actually supports the collective ambition and objectives of the Blueprint for Growth. And there are a number of ways that we can align those local development plans together. And indeed, that is a topic for members to consider now next Monday in terms of how we move forward on the LDPs. So what we are looking at through the Blueprint for Growth is we're focusing on 4 pillars, and those 4 pillars are outlined in paragraph 4.14 of the report. And those 4 pillars of growth are targeted around investment, because we are very attractive areas for big employers. Also, our destination management offer potentially is a great investment lever, and also our people. You know, our communities are very proud communities we have, and are very invested in our area as well. The second pillar is around placemaking, so that is sort of physical infrastructure and providing the infrastructure that allows our communities to thrive and sustain and connect, and also our infrastructure to support investment as well. Planning, obviously I've just explained the role of planning in terms of the spatial plan that underpins and supports our regeneration objectives. And also property, the role of property, the property portfolio that we as a council hold has a significant role to play, and also property that is held by private individuals has a role to play as well in our placemaking plans. So if I move on to each one of them in a little more detail, if I may. So paragraph 4.15 focuses on the investment pillar, and that is very much targeted around driving in big employers, and we have across both councils some strategic employment sites that some of them need to be unlocked, whether that's through planning or whether that's through funding, but certainly we have got quite a pipeline of strategic sites across both councils that we really want to home in on. And if you think about what our industry looks like, We have we're aligned with the UK government's industrial strategy in terms of the types of industry that we have in the area. And that is very much focused around life sciences, pharmaceuticals, high-end manufacturing. Also over in Blaen y Gwent, we have defence and artificial intelligence, as well as life sciences there. But both councils, underpinning that, whilst you've got large anchor companies, we have got a really buoyant SME, so small, medium enterprises, and also lots of entrepreneurs, lots of entrepreneurs that some of them are in their bedrooms, they're using these devices and have got businesses, running from their homes. So the role under investment is really to support and attract right the way from the large employers, right the way down through that sort of ecosystem or that thread, right the way down to the budding entrepreneurs. So that's really the focus on the investment pillar. Placemaking, reading this report this morning, I noticed a glaring omission, and it's housing. So under placemaking, we're missing housing, so apologies for that, Chair, and I'm sure that is going to come up in the questioning later. But placemaking is about creating those vibrant and attractive and functional spaces that, allow our communities to go about their business, allow them to connect with one another, and allow them to thrive. And we want to target our investment there through green infrastructure, because we have a lovely green landscape, haven't we, that we're really proud of. And we want to enhance that further and use that green infrastructure to provide connection between our communities as well. And also, we are focusing on an ecosystem of town centres. If you look at our town centre offer across both councils, they're in a similar place to many town centres in the UK. We all know people's shopping activities have changed, and the role of town centres need to change. And I think we are still in the place where we haven't quite worked out what the roles of our town centres are. So what we are currently working on as officers is really getting underneath each of the town centres and understanding what their unique selling point is. So, for example, Pontypool, the unique selling point from my perspective, and certainly those of my colleagues, is it's the park. It's the park. So how do we connect and open up the park to the town, and what does that town then look like when you really, really link it and embed it with the park? Cwmbran, for example, that is retail. Its location with the M4. It's a retail centre, and again, what can we do to ensure that retail offer is the retail offer that you and I would use, because it's not just the shops that we once used. And again, we're doing something similar across in Blaen y Gwent, and what we have got is, we're beginning to identify those USPs, those unique selling points, and also wrapping around it the destination management offer. Because again, if you look at Torfaen, we have a World Heritage Site. Are we really promoting and really sweating that as an asset, nationally and internationally? I would say no. I think there's a lot more we can do there. Our landscape, and the activities that our landscape offer is an attraction as well. And then when you look over into Blaen y Gwent, you've got, the historic Nye Bevan. And again, are we promoting that nationally, internationally, linking it with the NHS? No. So I think our destination management offer, wrapped around our placemaking and investment pillars, really can give us something quite special. I mentioned we've omitted housing in the report there, but housing has a crucial role in terms of placemaking within our communities. It's about ensuring that our current housing stock is of a high quality. So we're working with colleagues with Beth and her colleagues in Dave Leach's directorate to ensure that is embedded. And then what falls mainly in this directorate and under this strategy is about the new build, providing more homes, and but not just any homes. It's the homes for our communities. So a mixed tenure type of development that allows affordable homes as well as the high-end executive homes, providing a place for them all, and also providing and building new communities that are high quality and embed lots of green spaces and lots of social areas for our communities to connect. So the other pillar then is planning, and I've touched upon that already. So obviously the spatial plan, the LDPs are a key delivery tool for us. And again, we as officers are looking at those LDPs now through a much wider lens and ensuring that they connect with one another. So for example, just to give you an example, when you start looking at the LDPs in a joint way, things like education provision, you're able to look at that through a wider lens. Things like housing, we're able to look through a wider lens, and also connectivity. And, you know, we do know that a lot of our residents from Glenavon and the northern part of this valley hop over into Bryn Mawr to do their shopping. The road connectivity is not conducive to encouraging that connectivity. So that is something that immediately, through looking at those LDPs in a joint way, we are able to make those connections at a strategic and at a planning stage. In terms of property, if you just look in this town centre here, you know, in Pontypool, we can see lots of vacant buildings. Some of those are in our ownership. Most of them are in private ownership. So, and it's important for us to have a shared plan for the town centre. Just using this as an example, a shared plan for the town centre, because we need to start looking at some acquisitions and using our powers as a local authority to ensure that we are buying up the right buildings and repurposing the buildings. And the old hyper-value building, you know, coming back into Torfaen after being in Torfaen 15 years ago, that was something we were trying to grapple with back then, you know, and again, we are looking at that through a very different lens at this moment in time. So they are the 4 pillars that will underpin the strategy. And under each pillar, paragraph 4.21 then goes on to explain and outline and suggest, I suppose, some actions, some areas of focus that we would like to focus on. So under investment, I've mentioned that we've got some strategic employment sites across both council areas. And again, if we look at it through the LDP, Blaen y Gwent have got a lot of land along the heads of the Valley Corridor that is available now. And we know in Torfaen we are quite limited with our employment land. So again, looking at it through a joint lens, it would make sense, rather than lose businesses from Torfaen at this time, it would make sense to try and direct them up to where we know the other land is in our locality. So, and then when that land is exhausted, and through the LDP process, when the new land allocation for Torfaen comes into play, we're able to, you know, reverse that over as well. So again, that's just an example of where the opportunities of the Federated Council allows us to, you know, continue to grow business in the area. Skills and workforce development, we want to continue and sort of put the foot on the gas, I suppose, with our partnering with our universities and our colleges to ensure that the skills and the courses that they are offering are aligned with the industries that we are bringing into the area, and also those industries that we are looking to expand as well. We are looking at, we've got the Technium in Cwmbran, we've got something similar in Blaen y Gwent up in Ebervale, and again we want to expand those innovation and research hubs because they work really well, and with the new industries such as defence and artificial intelligence, you know, those innovation and research labs actually provide a home for those skills. And, you know, I know AI, it blows your mind, doesn't it, in terms of the opportunity that AI can give. You know, in terms of looking into the future, there are businesses that we'll have which we can't even think about at the moment. It's quite scary as well as exciting. And I've touched upon our destination management offer. I don't think we are there yet, but I think it is an area that has lots of potential. And also, again, we would like to look at it through a commercial lens. It's an investor. It brings people into the county borough, and also when people come into the county borough, they spend money. So, again, our economic performance improves. And then the last action is engaging and securing a development partner. This has been a matter that Cabinet have considered. They have given officers the go-ahead to procure a development partner and come back to Cabinet with a further report once as we've done that procurement exercise. We recognise that as officers and as members within local government, we have a certain set of skills, and they are really valuable skills in this space. But our commercial skills, do we really speak the language when we are going shopping to private sector investments? Like many councils, historically, we've relied heavily on the money, the investment coming from Welsh Government and UK Government. But we know that there is a lot of private sector investment out there that we can attract into this area and actually use to fund projects such as housing projects, which I know is a member's priority. So that working with a development partner, that will bring the commercial skills that we recognise that we currently don't have within our teams. 4.22 then focuses on placemaking, so I've already mentioned the work that we are doing around town centres, but the big piece of work really that will bring this all together is we are developing a coherent placemaking plan. So what we'll be able to do in the future is bring a plan here that shows on a map and also with some sort of more detailed illustrations, how it all fits together. So if you think of the county borough as a jigsaw puzzle, every piece of that puzzle has got an important role and a different role to play. So your own individual ward areas has a different role to play to Cwmbran, for example. But you need Cwmbran to thrive in order for your own area to thrive. So basically that puzzle is what we want to do is bring to you all the different pieces of the puzzle so that everybody understands how it all fits together, and because it's the sum of the whole that actually really brings the maximum benefit. So that is work that is currently ongoing, so we're looking to be able to bring that to you imminently. Connectivity is a key priority for us, not only transport connectivity, so rail and bus and road, but digital connectivity is really important, and we know that some of our outlying areas in our communities are still struggling to have superfast broadband. And we want to ensure that the connectivity, both digital and physical connectivity, enhances access to our key town centres, our education provision, and so on and so forth. And I've already mentioned the importance of our green connectivity as well, so further investment in our green spaces, because again, it's good not only from an employment and an investment point of view, but also from our own physical and mental health well-being. Planning under 4.23, again, so looking at the spatial plan, you know, we need to be looking at our strategic sites. Where are they? And again, looking over both councils allows us to look at that a little bit differently. And connect things up a little bit better than maybe we've been able to do in the past. And also the strategic development plan, which is the regional plan that is being driven by the Cardiff Capital Region. Again, as two councils working together, we've got quite an influential voice around that regional table to ensure the things that we want in that strategic development plan are actually put in there. And then under 4.24, the pillar around property, sites and premises, what we're looking to do is target those sites and premises to ensure that they allow our businesses and our town centres to thrive. And also what we want to do, those properties that are within our ownership, is ensure that they are green, you know, energy efficient. Because whilst we've got targets to meet, it makes business sense to actually have efficient and sustainable businesses, because they cost less to run, essentially. Then the report moves on to under 4.25 in terms of some performance measures. We've just put a starter for 10 there, essentially. A lot of those indicators, they are national indicators. There are already a suite of indicators in the existing skills and regeneration strategy, which certainly we'll be looking to lift into this strategy. And if there are any sort of indicators that you would particularly like to see, I'd certainly welcome that input from you today. The timetable for it, so it's a document that we as officers are confident that we can develop and produce. And the timetable for producing that now is that we would look at the end of November for a fully worked up draft. and we'd like to bring it back to you as a committee to consider before we take that into the Cabinet and into Council. We haven't done any consultation yet, but needless to say, as part of working up the draft and before it comes back to you for further consideration, there is extensive consultation that we will need to do to seek the views of a number of stakeholders and including our communities and our residents as well. And the financial implications, the Blueprint for Growth will set out the investment priorities, and each of those investment priorities will be distinct projects, and each of those projects will have a project plan which will include a financial plan as well. And as I've already indicated, we will be looking to continue our positive relationships with both Welsh Government and UK Government in levering funding, but we do want to focus on levering in private sector funding as well, so the development partner will be a key ingredient to ensure that we maximise that opportunity. Any risks, we will consider those risks fully in the blueprint, and again we'll be in a position to bring those forward to you in the further report. And I just move to paragraph 9 now, Chair. In terms of the suggested scrutiny activity, I really would welcome your input today. It's at a very early stage. The Blueprint for Growth is embryonic, and your opportunity to shape it, I would really value. Thank you.
Thank you for the introduction of the report. Right, so moving on quickly, because I know we've got quite a bit to get through today. May I invite members to ask officers questions as per the order we agreed during our pre-agenda meter, and any other questions that they may wish to raise at this time. So question number 1 is referring to 3.4 of the report, and I'll ask the first question if that's okay. Can you please give us more information and explanation as to what data and evidence base will be used to identify the key opportunities and priorities for growth in placemaking and regeneration across both Torfaen and Blaen y Gwent? And will some examples of emerging regeneration initiatives form part of the blueprint?
In terms of metrics, I think that there are a number of levels to it. So we've got robust data that is pitched at a national level. So the key one that really gives us an indication of how we are performing is the UK Competitiveness Index. And that basically ranks local authority areas across the UK in terms of their economic performance. And we're not alone in this space, okay, because a lot of the Welsh local authority areas are in the space, but we're in the bottom quartile, okay, so we're not performing brilliantly. And neither is Blaen y Gwent, and the region as well is not performing brilliantly either. But there are some glimmers of hope, and when you look over our performance over previous years, we are creeping up and we are making some progress. So it's really getting underneath that in terms of an understanding what is working and what isn't, and what do we need to do. So that's our main indicator. And then when we bring it down then in terms of sort of regionally and locally, we know that we have a high number of our population that could work, that are not. So we need to understand the reasons why, and they're multifaceted. But also, we know that part of that is because they haven't got the right skills. So we've got a role to play in ensuring that we upskill our potential workforce. And also, we want to match those skills to the industries that we are sort of positioning ourselves to deliver. So we have a number of metrics at that level. I'm sure Gareth, you'll be able to add a few more to that. And then getting right the way down to the granular level, and this is where your roles as elected members in your communities, you understand your communities and the dynamics within the communities and the challenges that they are facing. So it's using that data as well to actually inform our interventions. Now, we've done that work, we've done some high-level work already, and that has actually informed the Blueprint for Growth and those pillars and those areas of activity that we're proposing to you. In terms of the second part of the question, in terms of giving some flavour of the type of initiatives and projects, yeah, that isn't something we'd thought of, but certainly is something we can do, yeah, and I think it would be good because it would give a little bit of colour, wouldn't it, to what the strategy is looking to achieve. So, Gareth, I don't know whether there's anything you want to add.
Just... Yeah. Yeah, I can just add to Christina's points, just to say that in terms of the kind of the local dimension, the internal economic specialists, the statisticians within both Torvine and Blythe Gwent have got a good command of the local kind of data sets. Obviously, that needs to be brought together in terms of the blueprint, which is a kind of an approach that's reflecting both kind of issues and opportunities across both council areas. So there will be a piece of work that will be done over the next month or two as part of the blueprint development process to amalgamate and to assess what those data sets look like. So we've got the kind of the high level perspective, the national, regional, and we've got the local data evidence to support recommendations within the blueprint as they come forward. Hopefully that answered your question.
Yep, I think that probably does. We look forward to seeing that included. Can I invite Councillor Slade now to ask a question too, please?
Thank you, Chair. My question revolves around the table in paragraph 4.3. Of the 22 indicators on there, 11 of them are either data not available or data not yet collected. Are there issues around some of these indicators being smart? And if so, do they need to be amended as part of the blueprint to allow for more frequent and accurate review of progress?
So that's a really good observation, and the answer is yes, they do need to be revisited. There is some of the data sets that were built into the economy and skills strategy when it was developed in 21, and it was published in 22 after going to council. Some of those data sets just aren't collected anymore, which is surprising because they were data sets that came from the Office for National Statistics. They nationally collected data sets, but to some extent, you know, things have changed in the education area. The way in which data is collected is different around kind of GCSE, NVQs. So part of the process of developing the blueprint will be to take stock of the 22 indicators, which is actually quite a lot in the existing strategy, and determine which of those are the most important ones, because there's no point collecting data for the sake of it. It needs to be there to either track progress or to help us manage the way we deliver the programme. And as Christina said, there are other data sets that we're looking at as well that will form the overall suite. So it'll be some of the existing plus other data sets. For example, local government WRGA are recommending to authorities that they standardise the data sets they collect, partly because that helps create a firm baseline for regions to pitch for future funding. So, we're looking at that at the moment.
Thank you. Yeah, if I can just add very, very quickly, just to say that there's some lesson learned there, isn't there, really? That over-reliance on external data, we can't be sure, you know, when you've got a long-term strategy to 2030, we can't be sure it's going to be there by 27 or even if it's going to be there by 25. So some lessons learned to moving forward. Thank you.
Yeah, I just got a quick follow-up question as well.
Do you want to quickly ask?
Do my best. Is there going to be some, if that's the case, will it make sense now you're thinking about the fact that having joint data collection and analysis across the two authorities, because I think that would make sense, would seem to make sense.
Yeah, it would make sense. So some of the there will be some of the data that we will collect will be across both, because that's what the strategy is actually focusing on. The opportunities working collectively provides. But then there will be separate data streams that will flow from that as well. So because, as I mentioned earlier, Whilst there are a lot of synergies between both areas, there are differences, and we need to make sure that we recognise those differences and maximise those synergies. Yeah.
Councillor Slade?
Yeah, it's just an observation, because some of the indicators are sort of comparisons with where they compare with the average of where Wales is. I'll give you a quick example. Number 8 is increase the proportion of 12-year residents with a level 4 degree equivalent or higher education or qualification. 84%. Now, at first glance, that's telling us, or telling people, that for every 10 people living in Torfaen, 8 of them have got degrees. Nonsense. The actual figure is 47%. So, and not only that, when you get to level 2, the answer is 96% for people over level 2. Isn't there a danger there? You think, well, 96%, that's actually pretty good. We don't need to do anything here. It's going to take a hell of a lot of effort to move the dial on that 96%. Shouldn't they just be standalone, if you like? What proportion of residents have this qualification or above?
I think you've hit the nail on the head there, haven't you, in terms of it's not, this is, and as Councillor Goodman said, there's some lessons learned here in terms of, you know, it's about collecting data that we need to collect, not that others are telling us to collect, and that data needs to be really meaningful to us as well. So, and that is something that we're doing through, as a directorate, in our balanced scorecards, to make sure that the data that we are collecting is meaningful data and that we are using it as a management tool as well. So, and that equally applies here. But yeah, it's hitting the target and missing the point completely, isn't it? It's a great example, isn't it?
I say there is...
Councillor Ashley.
Yeah, I was looking at this data set and I was wondering how it related to the stuff that we collect on well-being and our own county plans, because obviously we got to use it objectively. I looked at this and it kind of doesn't bear relationship to stuff that I've seen before. I just wonder how it sits, because looking at county plan and well-being objectives for Wales, how does it relate?
Somebody answer that, please.
Yeah, sure. I mean, technically, I haven't got the county plan wellbeing objectives data in front of me, but technically, the information is being collected in the same way by the same person or people. So, if there are differences, it would be useful to have a conversation around that, Councillor Ashley, so we can make sure.
Well, I'm also thinking public health as well, because obviously we've got all those. You say there quite rightly there are other data sets, and I'm thinking yes. The other one that's interesting, because you're obviously talking about placemaking, and there's obviously green information which is not in there, or not on this one. I would like to see a lot more of it, to be quite honest, because I mean I think this blueprint's a brilliant idea. I've got no problem with it, but it is where we get the information and where we go with it, which is interesting.
Thank you, Councillor Ashley. That's useful input. Are we all happy if I move on to the next question now? Councillor Yule?
Chair, could I have an answer on that, please? Because I think it's rather important what I said there.
Yeah, in terms under each of the pillars, I think what the point you raise is a valid one, Councillor Ashley, and it's about pulling together the data that we have in the county plan that is relevant to this strategy as well. And as we work up the blueprint for growth, under each of those pillars, there will be a suite of performance metrics.
Thank you, Christine. That's great.
That will include, you know, some of the climate indicators that you've just mentioned there as well.
Yeah. That the relationship between all of those is what I see. Sorry, Chair, I didn't mean to cut across you on that. It's just important that data matches the aspiration.
Yeah, I think we've clarified that. When the actual blueprint comes out, we are expecting the information to be within it. Okay, Councillor Yule.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm referring to paragraph 4.7. So the report states that we have an aim to create inclusive growth that benefits everyone. could you explain what you mean by this and maybe sort of kick the tyres of what definition you've taken for inclusive growth? And I might have a follow-up.
Okay. It links back to the Marmot principles, isn't it, in terms of inequalities, and we know that there are a number of factors that contribute to inequality. So what we're doing is picking out those various factors and seeing if we can actually put some interventions in place. So inclusive, again, is just making sure that in our communities, so from our community's point of view, that we are actually building communities that allow everybody to be the best they can be. So recognising that, one size doesn't fit all. So those that have got mobility issues, for example, we need to make sure that we design that at place as well. So that's just one example. So, yeah. And in terms of the metrics, we've got to ensure that, this back to Councillor Ashley's point, is making sure that we've got the right metrics that capture not only the economic growth perspective, which is the hard and facts around job creation, so on and so forth. It's the quality of life indicators that we need to feed in as well.
Chair, that's great, thank you. I've got a question about trade-offs, which I might come back to with some supplementaries elsewhere. I completely agree with that approach, but if you take a step back and look at the state of the UK economy, and I hesitate to say travails, the UK government is going through and trying to actually achieve growth full stop and actually try to make that achievable and meaningful. I guess there was a question about at what point, where are those trade-offs sitting across the two jurisdictions then? If we are living in a period of slower or lower growth, where do you stand on the issue like pursuing an inclusive growth agenda come what may versus the need to think about actually if there are brighter spots across the two boroughs where there is greater economic activity, that we are not necessarily holding those brighter spots back and therefore depressing economic growth full stop?
That's a really good question. So if I bring it back to the placemaking plan, where I said, if you think of it as a jigsaw puzzle, it's all the pieces fitted together. So if I can use an example now, the Heads of the Valley corridor up in Blaen y Gwent is a hot spot, right? We've got to get into that, and we've got to sweat that, because that is an opportunity. And if we do that, that has ramifications, positive ramifications, right the way throughout Blaen y Gwent and over into Torfaen. So that is something that we would really want to focus on now. Similarly, we've recently had an announcement from UK government that there's funding coming that is being targeted towards the bottom end, the more local end of our economic page. So it's making sure that we, are focusing on the big stuff and those hotspots that you reference, but also not lose sight of some of the things that take a little longer, the slow burning things as well. And again, it's back to the metrics. When we bring the metrics back to, we're able to have that conversation and paint that picture through the data. And we may collectively get to a point where we say, okay, well, we don't go chasing that at the minute, because we see an opportunity here, but we collectively are comfortable that our data and our performance in this area may not be growing at the rate we would like it to, because the external factors that we and the external environment we're working within doesn't allow that. It's not the right time for it yet. Does that make sense? That was a bit of a messy answer. Yeah.
Yeah, well, most of my questions are messy. Like I said, I've got some more. I'll be coming back to trade-offs as we go through it.
Can I invite Councillor Hall now to ask his next question?
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, everybody. This is reference 4.8. With regard to sectors mentioned in paragraph 4.8, do you really have specific companies in mind? What challenges what challenges exist around having an appropriate workforce? And I'm going to add a caveat to this. Would it also bring workforces in from other areas? Thank you.
Question was, there's a couple wrapped up in there, wasn't it? So it was specific companies was the first part of your question, wasn't it? Do we have specific companies in mind? I think predominantly the first focus has to be on the companies that we have in our county borough already, because we know that they've got growth plans. So we know in our county borough we've got companies that represent all of those sectors. So the conversations we're having there is understanding their growth plans, and the good news is they want to stay with us. But the challenge we've got is that at the moment we haven't got land to accommodate them. So that is something that, you know, is a challenge for us at this moment in time. So that's our initial focus. Then we have to nail our colours to the mast, essentially, in terms of understanding we have got that are unique to us in the county borough, and also our workforce, and also going back to Councillor Yower's point, in terms of the external factors that we are working within. And we know that we are having conversations with companies that are attracted to this area, that are in those industries. Obviously, for commercial reasons and confidentiality reasons, I can't divulge them at the minute. But just to assure you that yes is the answer to your first part of the question. Would you mind just repeating the second part? Sorry.
What challenges exist around having the appropriate workforce available, and would this bring in workforces from other areas? So you obviously, you know, I mean, there's people within the community that will be in a level of employment, but those other people might need to come in from other areas to fill those jobs. So this is actually going to increase more people coming into Torvine to actually potentially work in those areas.
Again, I'm using the jigsaw puzzle analogy quite a lot today, so forgive me for that. But if you think of our position in the region, yeah, we know that we have a lot of our residents out to commute. Newport, Cardiff, Bristol, because of where we are on that M4 corridor. Similarly, we got people from the region that inward commute as well. And again, we would want to encourage that, and we need to ensure that our physical and digital connectivity channels are robust to allow that. But what we also want to do is ensure, target one of those metrics that we talked about earlier, in terms of we have people in our communities that are not working but could work. And with some upskilling and with some, you know, nurturing, we could get them into employment in our area. So it's a combination of all three, really.
Okay. Okay. Can I invite Councillor Ashley now to ask question 5?
Thank you. This is reference 4.11 and 4.12. The report highlights the challenges faced across Torvine and Blaenau Gwent. However, members felt that it should have focused more on strengths. Will it be factored into the blueprint? The actual two bits in the report look at persistent economic challenges, low job density, and what was just repeated about job density and in and out commuting, which was mentioned before. Could you comment on that? It's an absolutely fascinating subject, to be honest, how we get jobs into the area that suit people rather than people in and outing. I think I've read that right.
Yes, sorry, Councillor Ashley. I think it's almost. I think it's a really excellent point. I think it's almost inevitable that when you're looking at developing blueprints or strategies, you tend to kind of think about the issues and the challenges that you've got, and almost kind of pass over the opportunities. So clearly there's narrative in 4.11 and 4.12 that's talking about economic and social challenges. The report does talk about the unique strengths of the area, but we clearly need to expand on what that looks like. I mean, I think at least in large part Christina's points around the kind of the joint spatial approach, looking at key opportunities, sector strengths in industry, all of that is part of the mix in terms of balancing the issues or the challenges with the opportunities. And whenever I get involved in kind of developing a piece of work like this, I think that's a really important balance to strike. There are abundant opportunities, not just in Torvine, but in Blaenau Gwent as well. And actually together, that's a really powerful force and allows us to punch above our weight within the region in a different way than we're able to as individual authorities. So I think it's a really good point, and we should have probably drawn out in a bit more detail the positives as well as what you might describe as the negatives.
I also think, as councillor, I get asked by people who are ambitious to set up SMEs, small and medium enterprises. The problem we have in places like Cwmbran is not having enough places for people to do that from. If you look over in Monmouthshire, they've got a thriving opportunity places for that. I think it's reflective that people know that. I'm not so sure about Blaenau Gwent, but buildings from which you can do that sort of thing, and it's the opportunity that people don't necessarily want to commute. They would like to set up an enterprises, and there's quite an enterprise culture. It's where it goes from, and maybe people that return into the marketplace, especially women. Where do they operate from? And what opportunity they get, and what education or what training they've had to it. That's a very common problem. And if you're going to work in Cardiff, the transport's horrendous if you live in Blaenavon or head to the valley. So I think there's a lot of issues in this question. I would be interested, how we generate jobs where we are. And there's that issue as well. And then you've got Cwmbran, which is something different as well. I'm interested in your reflections on that.
Okay, there's a lot wrapped up in there, Councillor Ashley.
I know there is. I know there is. There's a whole scrutiny in its own right, isn't it?
You are. Yeah. But you pick up a valuable point in terms of small, medium enterprises. The demand for small units for startups is high. And again, that is an area that we need to focus on. And I would say that our town centres have got a role there to play in terms of, small enterprises such as that. So again, an area that is picked up within the blueprint as an area of focus for us that we need. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for that answer. Okay, Councillor Ashley, you happy to move on?
Yeah, great, Chair. No, there's a lot in there.
Right, okay. Can I invite Councillor Hall in next?
Thank you, Chair. This relates to 4.13. We all know that towns are changing dramatically due to the changes around home shopping habits and increased home working. Will the blueprint need to focus on the changing people's perceptions of what towns should look like? And I'll give you a prime example of that. As being a previous retailer, I often heard a person saying in the community, we don't have a shoe shop anymore. Lots of communities don't have shoe shops anymore. We don't have this or we don't have that, but they perceive it should be local to the environment where they are. So what changes are, what are you actually going to add in the blueprint for that?
I think I mentioned it when I was going through the report. Our vision is to have like an ecosystem of town centres where they all have different unique selling points and they all have a different offer. The reality is, isn't it, that the retail offer that was once in our town centres has gone. It's gone. Yeah, the digital technology and out of town stores has given us an alternative offer. So is understanding what is the value to people of our town centres, and things like the traditional, things like you say shoes, the cobbler, and trades such as that. We're finding that bringing those back into town centres is working well. I think it's a blend of, as Councillor Ashley picked up, in terms of having small startups in the town centre. Also having a destination that allows families to come into a town centre and not necessarily have to spend money. Yeah. So again, the park is a great example. You could have an afternoon out in the park, and again, you could come into the town centre there. So and also housing as a role as well, in terms of people living in the town centre and using the town centre. So it's a multifaceted approach, and we are doing some work at the moment to find in each of our town centres what is that unique selling point, and then we use that as the anchor and then grow around it. And again, you as ward councillors are instrumental in that, in terms of helping us shape that, because we need to understand what our residents actually want from their town centres as well. Okay.
Just quickly, on the basis of that, lots of startups do happen, lots of startups fail.
Yeah.
It's that person's opportunity to make a successful business. Some of those don't happen. From my perspective, I set up a business many years ago, and that was tough. I had to put my savings into it, and there's lots of people that would like to do startups that can't afford to actually start up. And I'm sure giving communities the sense of place to be able to work for themselves within their own communities is beneficial. So is there anything that we could add to the blueprint to enhance funding for those types of businesses that potentially would make a community stronger? For example, you've just mentioned about the cobbler. The cobbler is, I only know of a couple of cobblers in the area, but if there was a cobbler that potentially wanted to set up but couldn't afford to set up, that would be potentially an asset to a community, wouldn't it be good to be able to say, hey guys, we can help you on this? Thank you.
I'm sure Gareth will come in on the back of this now, because there is a lot we already do in terms of providing one-on-one support to people who want to start up a business. And that includes funding support as well. So there is a lot that we're already doing. Yes, there's always more we can do. Yeah, it's linking that opportunity to where there could be in a place, isn't it? So again, our place plan is instrumental in understanding what is our offer. And then when these opportunities come up in terms of business startups, then we're able to place that business in the right place to ensure that it has the right conditions for it to thrive. I don't know if you want to add to that.
Yeah, just to add, I think the authority is involved in trying to support community and kind of foundation economy businesses through existing projects. The reality is we've got very limited resource, and to some extent we are limited by the funding streams that we tend to access to provide that support. So I think, part of the thinking around the blueprint is to open up the opportunities for new investment, for new funding coming into the authority, so that we can be a bit more flexible and fleet of foot in terms of responding to those local needs. Because, as you say, it's probably as important, if not more important, to be growing indigenous business than it is to be focusing on trying to bring in the big bang kind of industries from outside. And in fact, it's much harder to do that these days than it was 10 years ago. So I think very much, and it's really good to have this conversation now, because it'll help inform the way in which the blueprint is shaped. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I'm just mindful of time, so can I ask if we can try and be succinct? If we can have supplementary questions, I'd like to get those in as well. So next question is Councillor Parish. It's around tourism. So Councillor Parish, can I invite you in?
Thank you, Chair. This question relates to 4.16. To what extent will tourism be considered as part of the blueprint in order to define how Torfaen, Blaenau Gwent can attract and accommodate visitors?
Yeah, but just briefly, I mean, it's certainly a key. It'll be a key kind of element within the thinking and the development of the blueprint. I think tourism, destinations, however you want to describe it, probably doesn't feature strongly enough in our economic strategy at the moment. Again, limited resource, both financially and in terms of human resource. So, and I know this is very much on kind of Christina's agenda as well across the two authorities, is making sure that we make the most of the opportunities that we've got, because they are unique in some instances. And also, there's a lot of economic value in the tourism sector in terms of, driving footfall, in terms of the businesses themselves, in terms of the revenues that they generate. So very much, if I'm honest, an overlooked sector, I think, in the last couple of years in Torfaen, and something that we'd look to focus on more strongly moving forward.
Okay, Councillor Parish.
Yes, if you want to be quick, I won't go any further, but, restaurants and cafes, you need to draw people into them, have something in it that people would like to bring their children to places like that. We're very low in places like that. in Torvine.
Yeah, that's it. Councillor Ashley?
Yeah, very quickly, I'm regarded as the canal nut on our council, but we've got a canal, which is a World Heritage asset in places. We've got the World Heritage site. We've now got as people that have been up there, the community farm. We've got facilities in the new town. And Blaenau Gwent, I believe, has got some wonderful places as well. I really think they ought to focus a little bit more on it. And all the ancillary businesses that can go around it, hotels, that's what Norma, I think, was on about, hotels, restaurants, etc. Look at what they're doing in Cwmbran in terms of food quarter. There's a lot that can go with it. There's also a possibility of guides, railway stations, a whole lot. I really think that's an opportunity you're missing on there. I've been on Cwmbran Community Council for 30 years and we've tried to promote that. I'm pretty certain Pontypool has as well. I think you guys need to up your game on this one. We used to have a tourism officer on the council and a department. We can't do that. It's not a thing we can do, but certainly we can put a structure in place under this and do it. Tourism is important. We're not regarded as a tourism area, but when you start listing the assets we've got, we're almost as good as Monmouthshire. And I had a conversation the other day. We haven't got a single National Trust building in both counties.
Thank you, Councillor Ashley.
Yeah, can I just do that as a recommendation? I wonder what the officers will say.
We'll come to recommendations at the end, if you keep hold of that one. Thank you, Councillor Ashley. Right, can I move on to the next question now? I think we've got the sort of gist on it. Councillor Slade.
I can skip mine.
You think it's been answered? The next question is actually mine, and I believe that we've also touched on that information as well, so we'll take that one out. Councillor Hall, the next question is yours.
Thank you, Chair. This is relating to 4.8. Members are aware that the 4.18. Sorry, members are aware that challenges exist around active travel, that public transport and national is a national issue, but these areas that will be considered are a part of the blueprint. And I go a little bit further than that. There's active travel to me is being able to go between communities and communities. And right now, in the winter, if I wanted to go from Blanavon to Cwmbran in the evening, and I wanted to cycle down, I use a cycle path that is very good in the summer, but yet in the winter, it's not a very good place. And as another point of view, there could be people that will want to work from communities to communities, that the lighting is very poor. And if we want to get people to use active travel to go to these places, we've got to make it easier, and dare I say it, safer for those people to travel between areas to be able to get there. So that's something I would like to see added to the blueprint. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I noted. I agree. Yeah.
Thank you for that question. Next question now. Councillor Slade, can I invite you to ask that on behalf of Councillor Hayes?
Thank you, Chair. Members have discussed how, on occasion, decisions made within the council conflict with other council priorities. How will the blueprint help to align council policies to ensure that the blueprint is achievable and not just aspirational? And I would just add my own point. There are policies outside of the council, so if we take Planning Policy Wales, we have a regional transport authority. So how are we going to be aligning all of this?
I just take things internally first, and that golden thread from the Marmot principles right the way down to our corporate plan, and right the way down into our departmental work programmes. The blueprint actually fits in there, so it's all embedded. So that is all secure. But you give a really good example in terms of national planning legislation. That is where we have to influence and shape as far as we can and lobby. And again, we do that collectively in terms of if we think that regulations or planning law is incorrect, that we challenge it. So, and again, we're already having those discussions, aren't we, around planning and Marmot and all of the requirements of that, under that sort of framework. And you know, we are having dialogue with Welsh Government around these things. You know, we are doing something quite new. And, you know, we will come across issues along the way. But, yes, you know, we would internally, they're all connected. Externally, we're very clear of what our narrative is and what our requirements are as both councils. And that's where we use our relationships and our influence externally as well. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe Councillor Yo's got a question that relates to this.
Yeah, I'll try and be brief. It's more about the it's about the placemaking paragraph as opposed to strict supplementary. But it comes back to what I was saying earlier on about what trade-offs we're going to make. Because the hard and potentially harsh reality of this is decisions are going to have to be taken about where economic priorities lie. So this is why I was asking the question earlier on. That if you look at Torfaen, like for the last 30, 40 years, there's this ongoing dynamic about Cumbraen gets everything, Pontypool feels left out. Glenavon claims that everyone ignores it, they get much more funding per head than anybody else does. All these conversations going on, whether they're right or not, I mean, this is where we end up being. If we're going to be thinking much more strategically and holistically about the concept of place and how we are going to create it, decisions are going to have to be taken about what you're going to do, but crucially what we are not going to do and what we want to prioritise within some of these hubs. I've mentioned it before. I think the idea of trying to turn Pontypool, I think it's possible, it'd be a hard ask, but to turn Pontypool into more of a destination town means, going back to what Councillor Parish said, we need to think much more creatively about what that hospitality offer might be, how we link it to the park, etc. But then we're not going to be able to do that. For example, if Glenavon wants to say, but hang on, we're the World Heritage Site, why are you ignoring us to prioritise Pontypool? So the question is, are we prepared to have those conversations and to put that framework in place? Crucially, though, we now have to do that. We'll have to do it across 2 boroughs, because the reality will be we can't start doubling. You mentioned these things are going to be strategic. We're not going to be that strategic if everything has to be doubled up to ensure that we can tick boxes across the 2. And then the third question is basically what is the relationship that you'll be having with specifically Newport and Monmouthshire, being very conscious that they are both on our doorsteps. Abergavenny exists. If you want that sort of semi-rural, not quite heavy industry sort of retail and a bit of shopping offer, it's already there. Trying to turn one of our towns into that is going to be difficult. So I guess it's about trade-offs and thinking about it, actually how we are going to communicate that and if we are prepared to stick to those lines once they get sticky.
Yeah, really good question. And it will be about trade-offs. And from officer perspective, what we will be presenting to you, supported with data, is where we feel our interventions will make an impact. Yeah? And we can put that on the table to you, and ultimately it's a political choice. But I will tell you now, we can't do everything and anything. Yeah, it's like it's trying to spread a single sheet over a double bed. It just doesn't fit. Yeah, we've only got finite resources. So it will be coming back to you in terms of choices. Yeah, and that will be across both councils. In terms of relationship with others, yeah, we don't operate as an island. We don't. You know, we've got Monmouthshire on our border. That is a unique offer. And as part of our destination approach, which Councillor Norma Parish outlined, we have to take that into consideration as well. And part of the attraction with Glenavon is how close it is over the border into Monmouthshire. So from a destination management point of view and a commercial opportunity, we still want people to come into our area, and also we would still want them to visit Monmouthshire when they're there. You know, we're not going to, yeah? So, because we're part of a region, we want the region to thrive. So, you know, all of that is in play. Those conversations take place formally through the Cardiff Capital Region, at a strategic level, but certainly at an officer level, on a day-to-day basis, those connections are there. Once as we've got our firm narrative and our firm set of priorities given to us by you as members, we do our stuff. Yeah. Okay.
Thanks for that answer. Right, the next question is Councillor Ashley.
Yes, and I've got the other planning question here, which might be more pertinent to Cumbraen in some ways, but I won't say that. It's pertinent to the whole borough, which is 4.19, and that's another whole scrutiny in some ways. If you look at it, it says a lot of planning opportunities will be dependent on private developers. Don't we know it? how will we attract them to sign up to the vision and ensure that site applications are assessed in a timely manner? It's also a national issue if you look at it. Chair of Planning sat here at the moment knows this one only too well.
Thank you, Councillor Ashley.
Yeah, I'm just going to add a bit of narrative on this because one of the big national problems is that developers get land and bank it, which is, I believe, part of this problem. You drop that one, Christina?
Thank you, Councillor Ashley. Who's going to answer that?
Yeah, we've thought of that one, Councillor Ashley. In building the LDP, obviously those relationships and those conversations with the developers are pivotal, and we are well rehearsed in doing that. So we're very clear in pulling the LDP together of what the aspirations are and the intentions are of our private sector partners. Also, we have in building the blueprint for growth. We intend to engage widely with our stakeholders, and that includes developers that our colleagues in planning are already having conversations with, as well as our RSLs, because obviously they are key partners in terms of enabling us to develop and deliver our housing requirements. And I know there's some work needed in that area. Thank you.
Chair, I want to put a supplementary in because when you put these questions together the other day, you didn't ask this one. If I may, Christina, I would be very interested in why we're not developing social housing options. It's something that we've not done as far as I know. Newport does, and certain other places do, like cooperative housing, like housing co-ops, etc. I'm wondering whether that's something innovative we could have a look at. Have you got any experience of that at all, please? I've asked that question before in other places.
Okay, if I've got experience of it, yes. And it's ensuring that we have the right model of delivery for the set of circumstances we're presented with. So as we are working with our RSLs or looking at land options, we are exploring all different models of delivery. And again, that will be for members to decide at the appropriate time in terms of what model of delivery or models of delivery that we will be taking forward. But I mentioned earlier the development partner. That development partner will be instrumental in guiding us and informing us of other options of delivery that we are not aware of currently. Thank you.
Just one quick comment on it. Thank you very much for that, because one of the frustrations I think the members have had has been the amount of social housing we've got, and that was why I asked that question.
Thank you, Councillor Ashley.
Yeah.
Next question, can I pass that over to Councillor Nick Hawler to ask on behalf of Councillor Haynes?
Thank you, Chair. At brief scrutiny, Councillor Haynes was really very, very positive on what she wanted to say. So this is relating to 4.22 and 4.23. Is there scope for more flexibility around the assessments of planning applications and policies in order to avoid companies potentially leaving the borough for opportunities elsewhere?
We work within a legislative framework. We have to do that, and of course we'll continue to do that. But I just wanted to assure you and Councillor Haynes particularly that we don't allow businesses to leave to go elsewhere unless we've explored absolutely everything. Yeah. Did you want to add anything else?
I think the reality is, again, I keep talking about capacity issues. I suspect there are some challenges around applications getting processed as quickly as they can. Certainly something. The blueprint itself is not going to address that because that's about setting strategic priorities. But within that, in terms of the delivery framework that underpins it, that's going to be really important. Christina's mentioned about the delivery partner. A really important element of this for me is to give the market confidence that we're clear of what it is that we want to achieve. So the housing example, at the moment we're in a position where we are reacting to developers, investors coming to us as opposed to being on the front foot and packaging up our opportunities and taking them out to the market. So if we're going to do that and play a more proactive role, we need to make sure that our delivery capability behind the scenes is fit for purpose, and part of that is looking at planning policy. We can't really change because it's statutory, most of it, but certainly the resource implications we can look at.
Thank you, Chair. I think Councillor Haynes' frustration was, within her ward, there was a plan application that it was just for a change of use. And the policy that was sort of taken as gospel was the local development plan, which of course was written in 2013. Things have moved on since then. You know, we had COVID, and the business was not granted planning permission, and they left. Now, I've got a similar example of it in my ward, where we have an office block, one of many which are empty, but yet the LDP, our local development plan, is saying that we need these office blocks. Well, we probably did in 2013, but we certainly don't now. So I think that's the kind of flexibility, perhaps, that Councillor Haynes was questioning.
Just by way of reassurance, that type of situation is coming up increasingly frequently, and is a live topic of conversation. So leave that with us.
And can I add as well, I'm not sure when you talk about the office block, if you're talking about not having an office block and having residential, is that what you meant?
No, that's with taxation.
Right, okay.
It's a proposal.
Okay.
I don't know. They may be resistant.
Okay, thanks. I think we've got the assurance that that's being looked at now. All right, the next question is mine, so it's regarding 4.23.
I put my hand up a minute.
Oh, apologies, Councillor Ashley.
I noticed this focuses on 22. There wasn't a focus. I've got transport infrastructure and green and digital infrastructure investment in. They're obviously in the same area. Can we make sure that there's a very strong emphasis on those? We're doing well in Torvine. I don't know what Blaenau Gwent's like on that. Imagine cycling around Blaenau Gwent's hard work. I have cycled up there, but in terms of all those things in those two paragraphs, and there are two paragraphs, there's a heck of a lot of work being done on both, especially the green and digital infrastructure. Can we make sure that that is a lot more emphasised than those couple of paragraphs? I've just noticed they're almost throwaway in there.
Yeah, I think the blueprint.
So much so we've gone over them.
This is pre-draft, so hopefully when we scrutinise the blueprint, we'll see that included.
So,
Thank you,
hopefully, Chair, you'll be onto it. But I've noticed that stuff, the transport infrastructure and digital, green and digital, a lot of stuff in there. There's probably a scrutiny in both of them. So I just point that out because that's something that both of them would warrant that.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Ashley. Moving on to the next question, because I'm mindful of the time again. I'll ask this one. It's with regards to the joint local development plan. So the question is, what progress has been made to align the timelines currently in place for each local authority? Because I know it's slightly out of sync at the moment. Also, how will the differences between the local authorities be made clear within that document so that we maintain that sovereignty and
I touched upon this earlier in that there's a members' seminar next Monday, so there'll be a lot more detail for members to consider at that time. And there are a number of different options available to us, and it's those that we're asking you to consider next Monday. But in terms of the progress, yes, they are at slightly different stages. Blaenau Gwent's local development plan is due to go on deposit early next year, so they're ahead of where Torvine is. Torvine is a couple of years behind. They are talking to one another anyway as officers. The plan is what you've got in the region anyway, is a close network of planners. They tend to work closely together. In terms of if you were minded to consider a joint LDP, the sovereignty is something that we've considered fully, and there are options there for members to consider at the appropriate time if that's a route they want to take. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. We look forward to the member seminar. We're prepared to ask more questions on Monday. Okay, Councillor Yole, I think the next question is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's referring to paragraph 4.24. How can we ensure that community asset transfers are fair and equitable? For example, they may be more successful in more affluent areas due to the skills and knowledge available in those local communities.
Yeah, and that's a really good point, which we need to kind of factor in as part of the asset management strategy, which I think came to scrutiny earlier in the year. We talked about doing some further work around the corporate landlord model and the a kind of a suite of measures that would sit below that. So a community asset transfer policy is being drafted at the moment. It's work in progress, relatively kind of early stage, due to be written and shared before the end of the financial year. That will set the framework, the authority's framework, in terms of how we deal with requests from community organisations, particularly to kind of access and occupy council premises. It's a good point around equity. If I'm honest, not something we particularly thought of, but that's certainly something that needs to be factored in terms of moving forward.
Yes, please.
No, I think that's really good. I mean, can I add something else then to think about this policy? If you're looking at some, in the abstract, I think community asset transfer as a policy is a very good thing, but in practice, and there are very many case studies across the UK where the enthusiasm exists at the point of transfer, but things can wind down. So it's just, I think, two things I would think about is, one, what might the intervention mechanism look like if, for example, something is transferred and X number of years down the line that community group has fizzled out or moved, or where the ownership resides. But B, it's also to give some thought about, when you're making the policy, to ensure that those community groups who are bidding for the transfer of the asset, coming back to your point, Christina, about inclusivity, that those groups ensure they do as much as they can do, and we also we make them stick to it, to be as inclusive in those communities as possible, because I'm sure we all have anecdotes which suggest that isn't always the case.
Chair, am I able to come in just on that point?
Yes, please do, Beth.
Yeah. I think hopefully just to add some value in terms of that conversation around sort of the committees that would take on those community asset transfers should we get into that position. And I think it's just that alignment with the community sort of team within the directorate and the work to strengthen volunteering. And for me, that isn't just about increasing the number of volunteers, but actually how do we target volunteers in a better way, that we recruit the skills and experiences that are needed to strengthen some of those community organisations and those committees. I know it's something the executive member is really keen on, in terms of recognising actually where sometimes we need to add strength and value to that. So I think that's probably a critical element that we'll need to be thinking about when we look at the community asset transfer, in terms of building strength, training, experience to those committees that need that, isn't it? And again, that's back to equity, not all committees will require that, but I think it's just that opportunity to explore.
Thanks.
Okay, next question. Can I invite in Councillor Hall to ask this one, please?
Thank you, Chair. You've actually come across this already on this question. So the anticipated guidelines for consultation, anticipating blueprint going to the Council for approval, members would be very keen for it to come back to scrutiny prior to that. So your comments earlier, Christine, is very, very welcome to hear that will be achieved. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that could well be a recommendation when we come to that point in the meeting.
Cheers.
Okay, the next question is mine. This, looking at 5.1, the consultees again, and there's some suggestions within this. Do we think that there's scope to actually break down the consultee groups further? You've got sort of economy and whether that could be broken down into retail, hospitality, because they're going to have very different viewpoints. It will make the consultation a bit bigger and, you know, more complex, but there's also social housing landlords and private landlords. They'll have valuable information to put forward. There's an Iron Bed and University Health Board, and health and access in good health, and all of this links in with these joint local development plans again. And the police also, there'll be issues around antisocial behaviour and crime, which we could look at within the blueprint, where those hotspots are. What could be done to actually try and tackle that by the way of youth intervention, more input from the Police and Crime Commissioner, that type of stuff. So that was some suggestion around breaking those consultee groups down a little bit further so that we get more sort of detail from consultees. That's it, really.
Sorry, fighting over the mic. Yes, yes and yes.
We leave that there then. Go on to the next question. Councillor Parish, I think this was yours.
Thank you, Chair. 6.2. The report states that the intention is to move over time away from a reliance upon UK Government and Welsh Government funding and grants, and to increasingly use our capital funding as a primer to leverage the private sector investment. So how confident are we that this can be achieved, and what costs are anticipated around working with a proposed development partner to ensure that our propositions are investor ready?
Thank you, Councillor Parish. I think there was just some thoughts on this to look at that the cost implications, so that we can evaluate it later down the line.
Yeah, if I can pick the second part of the question up first, the development partner, there will be some costs around that, and that will be established through the procurement process, which will make its way back into the political arena for decision at the appropriate time. So there will be costs, but I'm unable to quantify them at this moment in time. In terms of the model, the financial model, confidence levels, yes, I'm confident that we can do better than what we're doing now. The over-reliance on Welsh Government and UK Government, if we want to drive this agenda, isn't going to deliver it. It's not enough. So we have to get funding from elsewhere, and our own capital programme isn't in the space of the investment that we're talking about, that we need in our communities, but a combination of them all together with penetrating the private sector investment market, I think is something we can do something quite magical with. But the quantum of it, I don't know yet, but let's go and have a look, I would suggest. Thank you.
Thanks for that. Right. Councillor Parish, is that okay?
Yes, yes.
Councillor Yeo, can I ask you to ask the last question, please, on behalf of...
I can't do a very good impression. But okay, this is paragraph 6.4. How will you ensure that the blueprint is future-proof and sustainable? Will each local authority have a clear identity within it, similar to the approach being taken by the deal, where plans are aligned but distinct?
Yes, is the answer to that. And in terms of sustainability around it all, it's back to the metrics again, isn't it? You know, you're going to be scrutinising this at regular points, so that will indicate the sustainability and the success of it as well. Thank you.
Thank you for that answer. I think that's, I will find a bit of reassurance on that separation of context. Right, I think that's the end of the questioning strategy. So can I thank the executive member and the officers for their time and contributions to the meeting? And if I can ask you at this point to leave the meeting so that members are able to formulate our recommendations. Thank you ever so much for your time today. Right, members, can I just remind you that the meeting is still in formal proceedings and that we're still being webcast at this point. So let's remind members what we've been asked to, the Scrutiny Committee has been asked to consider when coming up with their recommendations. So members of the Economy, Environment, Overview and Scrutiny Committee are invited to consider how the economic blueprint for growth will support the aspirations of the federated councils, to drive future investment in people and place, consider whether the blueprint for growth will, when completed, support future investment decision-making and prioritisations in line with the county plan, Marmot master plan and members' expectations, provide recommendations to the executive member of Economy, Skills and Regeneration on areas of improvement or development in relation to the proposed blueprint for growth. So I'm sure we've got plenty of meat on that. Do members have any specific recommendations they'd like to make in the report at this time? If we can please raise hands, please.
Something on the basis of how to actually get active travel moving in a more prosperous way. You're looking at the infrastructure in a clearer way to make communities being able to move between communities. I think this is a long-term issue that's affecting a lot of people.
Councillor Hall. I've got a few, but do you want to go through the ones you picked out first, Gareth? Geraint, sorry. I'm losing the plot now, Gareth.
That's my brother. Yeah, I've got a few. I'll run through each of them if you want to just let me know whether you want them in or not. So in terms of question 1, Christina agreed that having some examples of the emerging regeneration initiatives within the blueprint will add some flavour to the blueprint. So do you want
yes, please. That's one of the recommendations I've marked up.
Question on that then. Are we suggesting, I can't remember who asked it, were we suggested that we wanted examples from within the geography, or that we thought it would be useful to have case studies of what's been useful elsewhere?
I think we could say both of those.
I think do both. But actually, could you stress that it would be interesting to have case studies from across the UK, not just look within Wales?
Yeah, I think there's learning chance opportunities there, aren't there? And I think there was another one on 4.3. Have you picked that one up?
Yeah, so was that question 2, Chair? Yeah, 4.3. Yes, yeah, they need to, yeah, they made it quite clear, didn't they? They need to revisit the indicators. They agreed that 22 was quite a lot. And obviously there's new data available since that previous strategy was put in place. And so, yeah, need meaningful data that supports our work and not rely entirely on external data or to be led externally. So, yeah, so.
The data question, we did have quite a discussion around that. There was the stuff that county planned and also supporting well-being as well. They did admit that they needed to do a bit more on that.
Councillor Slade, that was your question. Are you happy with that recommendation?
Yeah, pretty much. Just to make them relevant. Stop making comparisons with the rest of Wales, because it doesn't really leave any headroom, really. Yeah, but I mean, they've said that they will in future ensure that they are smart.
Yeah, Councillor Yole.
Yeah, and on that fact, I was quite taken, obviously I haven't looked at it as forensically as Councillor Slade had done. I was quite taken by the fact that some of the figures as displayed are actually...
No, it's just...
I hesitate to say they're misleading, it's not very useful. So can we ask them to actually ensure that we have the most accurate, correct, but also the plainest data set possible? So
I think the acronym SMART was what we wanted to see them be in, because at the moment they're not hitting that benchmark. Yes, please, if you can go on, Geraint.
Yeah, the next one, obviously relating to question 5, members brought up the point that the blueprint, well, not the blueprint, sorry, the report focused on these sort of challenges and that we've got, and I think it was Gareth who agreed that yeah, when the blueprint is drafted, it needs to expand more on the strengths and opportunities available.
Yeah.
As we all.
I agree with that. Sorry, just to jump back to question number 3. Can we ask them explicitly to set out their definition of inclusive growth, but again, to make it as plain speaking as possible?
Right, okay.
Support that.
Next one, Geraint.
Yeah, just jotting down the...
So you've got the strengths one there, have you? Because that one...
Yeah, we've got that one, Councillor Ashley.
Just put Councillor
Thank you.
And the strengths and opportunities. Right, I'm going to hand this one over to members, but I've got one down for question 7 that I'm pretty sure somebody's going to want to make a recommendation on tourism.
I've got that down as tourism. We need that clear emphasis on how we're going to develop that. And I was interested to note the point about Monmouthshire, Newport, making it a Gwent-wide sort of offer that we're sort of making.
I do think we need to really emphasise the tourism bit, because I did go on a bit there, but I'm sorry about that. But we do have a lot of strengths on that as well.
Yeah, I think the officers are aware of where the strengths are. It's just pulling it all together and how we offer it as an attractive package that tourists will want to come individually, and also companies may bring people in then to do tours, that kind of thing.
I
The
also
officers
think
know,
both,
the officers know the actual attractions, I'm sure.
no, it's actually both counties together might actually make a quite. If you read the literature, a lot of the time we're done down, and I think that's important. We're not.
I've got another one that's down at number 15, around building in the equity and the work with communities on the question on community asset transfer. Do you want to phrase that a bit better at all, Nathan?
Yeah.
No, I was looking really at, that we've got different communities.
Okay, I think there's something there about actually ensuring that basically we don't want any community asset strategy just to go ahead with the fastest pace assets. But at the same time, we don't want it not to happen if we're just waiting for everybody else to then be in a position for it to...
And the fact that our communities are so different, some communities may not have the built-in skills they may have the enthusiasm, the volunteers, but not the skills to manage assets. How are we going to help those to successfully take the... And also the point is if it folds.
A policy.
Yeah, which they said they would do. I think basically when there's a question about actually could we have some engagement on the drafting of a community asset strategy, community asset transfer policy to ensure that there is equity across the borough, but also puts in the fail-safes that we might need where things might fail, basically.
Okay, brilliant. Have you managed to get that one?
Question 6. Could we ask a question? Could we ask a question? Could we ask a question around the perceptions and the acceptances of what towns are going to change, and how much help they can actually help them to do for those acceptances? That's a question.
I wanted one in about with that question I did ask about planning and private developers, because and land banking, because that seems to be quite a question, and our confidence that can be tackled. Have I got that right?
The planning issue around land banking, Gary.
Yeah.
And how that can be tackled, and companies can be encouraged to bring their development land forward. I think that's what...
Because that's quite an issue, that is.
And I think there's a recommendation in there about the blueprint meeting the environmental housing growth, and
the green agenda.
Clarity on the accountability and governance of these things as well, as we're looking at them in a too federated type of way. So there's clarity there.
Linda, I also dumped one in there about transport and the other issues which were not very highly featured there. I think they need more featuring. They're obviously work in progress from what I can see.
Yeah, we can
roll that into Nick's though, can't we, Stuart?
Pardon?
We can put that one into expand the active travel recommendation to match all travel, but that's Cardiff City region type stuff again, isn't it? So,
but there was the green and community infrastructure stuff needs to be done as well, because it's obviously all work in progress.
We definitely need the very strong recommendation that the blueprint, the actual draft blueprint, needs to come back to scrutiny. It's not a may, it's not a wish, it's a want, it's a has to.
Yeah.
And then we can look at the basket to see when it's appropriate with officers to bring it back, probably beginning of next year. I think we've suggested that.
Yeah, I can sort of touch on that in the next item if members are happy with that.
Yeah, because we may have some of the consultations done by then as well on the draft.
Chair, can I come in with
please.
Public transport again? Because if people haven't got their own transport, we have to rely on public transport, obviously. And if we want a specific place in Torfaen or Blaenau Gwent to have people visiting it, we really need the public transport to be there for them.
Yeah, I think that's
something
in a pre-agenda, wouldn't it? That it's not just active travel; it's all transport links and public transport. So, Geraint, I can see scribble in there.
They're different because the active travel is the walking, cycling, horses,
we've got it,
and public transport's that.
Yeah, we've got it. Okay, evaluation.
Can I bring up the green infrastructure and the digital thing? They are very big topics. There's a lot in this blueprint, which is, as I said, almost worth scrutiny in its own right, and there are paragraphs in it.
Yeah, we haven't actually seen the blueprint yet, Councillor Ashley, so we're sort of asking what we'd like to see in it at this point.
That's what I'm saying. Separate out the green. Can I just say, separate out the green infrastructure from the digital infrastructure? They're two vast subjects.
Okay, Geraint's written that one down for you, Councillor Ashley.
Thank you. Sorry to do it.
It's the evaluation that I've picked up on, how we're going to evaluate this in a structured way going forward. I'd like us to have something at this point with the blueprint being a draft and published, where we can see clear timescales as when evaluation is going to be carried out and what the benchmarks for that evaluation are. Is everyone happy with that?
Yeah.
I'm just running through.
Can I say they talk? Can I say they talk about placemaking and mention community in that, but they also, in terms of investment, should also talk about community, because you talk about volunteers and people. They need to be in both aspects. Do you get what I'm on about? There are different sections. They don't actually talk about volunteers and that whole people thing in the investment. They just talk commercial.
Stuart, can I make a suggestion that that's maybe delving a bit too deeply at this point, and maybe that's something we can look in when they've actually set the strategy out?
Okay, I'll go with that. But I did read that when I was reading the report. I didn't bring it up because the questions didn't lead me to it. But it's a really, really important thing. You know, investment, the community, is as important as the commercial one, because that's our you know, get what I'm on about?
Because we're at this pre-draft stage and we're sort of going into anticipating the draft. So we've got quite a lot of recommendations already. Is everyone happy with those? If Geraint takes them away, tidies them up? I think it has had benefit. We were a bit unsure at some point about the benefits of pre-draft scrutiny, but I think it's become clear now that we've got some good input into what we expect to see within this blueprint when it does come to us as draft. So, is everyone sort of happy with those?
Yes, totally. Well done.
Okay. The next item on the agenda is the item for the next meeting. So, Geraint, over to you. Can you please take members through these items?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Obviously, you're all familiar with this report, so I won't dwell on it too much. The only sort of question in my mind was hearing off Christina and Gareth. Is in the agenda? Right. So yeah. So the only query in my mind was what sort of Christina, Gareth, and Councillor Gordon would say in terms of when the actual the blueprint would be ready. But obviously they made it clear that they were hoping to have a draft in together by the end of November, and obviously there'd be consultation after that. So with that in mind, that's not going to overtake the item you've got. So the item in your basket, which was agreed obviously at the recent visioning session, is the UK Shared Prosperity Fund programme. So if members are happy to stick with that, then obviously we'll proceed, and I'll send the pro forma around to members before I send it on to Christina and Gareth.
Yeah, I don't think the blueprint is going to be available by that date.
No.
It would be very risky to anticipate. If they could be 100% certain, but it may be more beneficial in January when the consultation's been carried out. And then there's a conversation obviously to be had within the upcoming months, obviously around, if you remember on the basket there, you'll see that recycling, members said they wanted to have a recycling item, but the specific topic wasn't confirmed. Whereas if the chair and I have a conversation with the relevant directors, being Mark Thompson, Christina Harry, they may, it may be that that it's decided, by yourselves as a committee, that you'd rather have the strategy back, the blueprint back at that meeting at the end of January, if that's feasible. I don't know, timing wise, how long we're going to be. So the sports lease policy provision maintenance of play areas, would that potentially be ready for January if we wanted to?
Again, that's another conversation that we could factor in with Mark and Dan Morelli. And
if that's available and that's going to be tight, we could move that to January and possibly move the blueprint.
And if the blueprint was then ready for the 12th of March, basically. We only need to agree your next item, and the rest of it can be a moving feast as things become clearer.
If I can, Chair, I think if they are in a position to bring this back, I think because of the nature of the urgency of having to sort this out, especially with other things that might be evolving with the development plans, etc., I think I'd rather have another bite of this cherry in January, and not wanting to diminish the ongoing issues we have with recycling, but they are almost an ever-present. So if that gets moved back, I'm not sure anyone's...
Have we agreed that we're looking at what lessons learned from the management of the SPF programme on the 27th of November?
I think that's the only option at the moment, is to stick with the current basket.
Yeah.
It's all aspects of the programme.
It's quite a big subject.
Yeah.
And it's lessons learned we'll be looking at. So that could be useful.
If we stick with
it's Boris's legacy, Alan.
So if members are happy to stick with that item. So
Lord Lowe knows what he wants to do there, and
we're still on the webcast, everyone.
Yeah, can I just call us off order a bit so we can just finish the meeting?
Yeah. So I'll draft up the pro forma, share it with the committee, and obviously we'll send that on to Christina and Gareth, and then, like I said, the next few items after that we'll just see how things progress, and at the November meeting we'll agree the January item.
Okay, I think we've got that covered. So item 7 on the agenda is the date of the next meeting. The next meeting will be held on the 27th of November 2025. All that's left now is for me to thank the committee for all of their input today. It's very much appreciated your contributions to the meeting, and I will now close the meeting. Thanks for attending.